Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to WCS NA Challenger. I'm still doing the context switch. I'm back here, and I am joined by Nathanius. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing great.
I'm going to ask you that every single time.
I'm doing fantastic. This is WCS America.
America.
Can you get that deep growl when you say America?
America.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Yes.
I watch your stream enough.
Oh, yeah.
I know how to do the America.
Okay. I'm glad. I'm glad with that. We were just talking about the hotkey thing.
Yeah, you know, I have to say, it's all true. It's all true.
Okay.
No.
Do you want to introduce the next match before we waste more time?
Yes, we're going to be hopping into Silky versus Semper. These two guys I'm huge fans of. Semper especially, I feel like my favorite thing when I watch Semper is that he will win games and it's super fun and entertaining because he's got such a rambunctious style. Yeah. When he loses games, it's still also entertaining. When he has like close games, those are the really entertaining ones. But like no matter what, you always get something good with him.
He's good. I do believe he got a little bit of stage time last year, if I recall correctly. He's a very good American Terran player as far as up and comers go.
Zest in not this year's Nation Wars, but last year's Nation Wars. I mean, he is okay.
That was his first big thing, at least as far as I remember.
Yeah, Semper is such a weird one because I feel like he is one of those players that has this enormous high in terms of potential skill, but he also has big lows, and a lot of it revolves around the fact that he's also a law school student in Canada.
Oh, God.
He is managing his time. This is actually where I feel like StarCraft experience and skills in micromanaging your actions and your time translates directly into real life, because he is constantly just like, okay, so I made it home. I can only practice for like 2-3 hours. How am I going to spend that time effectively? And I know right now his school has been really ramping up a lot. So he kind of was, it got to a point where he qualified through the ladder qualifiers, but he was saying, I'm not sure if I can play 15 games for 3 days in a row because that's too much time and I have classes and everything. So he barely managed to make it through.
That's a very impressive workload to take while trying to be a pro StarCraft player, because he is a very good player as far as college students go.
Yeah.
Excited to see as they're starting up. Semper versus Silky. Silky, a player that we can talk about a little bit, but there's not a whole lot to say. I've played him a few times on ladder. He smashes my face in every time. He's a very good Zerg. But I guess first, our player in the bottom left, we have the blue Terran player. He is Semper. Cool guy. Very nice fellow.
Very, very nice guy. And up here in the top right, he's also a pretty nice guy, attending UC Berkeley as a computer science major. It is Silky.
Yeah, I think Silky is playing in the TESPA competition.
He is. He is playing for UC Berkeley, kind of acting as that star player for them, since Suppy has since graduated and moved on to a different team. I think he's, because Suppy's over in Philadelphia now.
Yeah. Philly's, you know.
Yeah, it's a pretty nice place.
We got some pretty good cheesesteaks over there.
And he also got some pretty good Cheesadelphias there.
Yes,
A really great NA LAN event that I think...
More esports in Pennsylvania, please.
Oh, you got to make it out to one of those.
That's what I'm waiting. That's when I'll return to take my crown back as the Pennsylvania esports guy.
I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, Silky is a fun guy. You were talking about how good he can be, because I know we've talked a lot about Semper, but Silky is also really interesting because he is one of those players, and there are definitely brands of these kinds of players out there in the NA scene who just say, I'm not going to play NA ladder almost at all. I'm just going to focus on Korea. And he's also the guy that will just stay up every night watching Dark, Suvods for Korea. He, in a lot of ways, I feel like he plays a lot more akin to the Zerg Korea meta as opposed to like the North American meta, which I always say is akin to like No Regret.
Yeah. Well, if these are players that practice outside, then the best way to describe them would be like, if you do run into these players on NA, they're going to be some of the scariest dudes that you're going to go up against. Silky is very, very good. Semper is very, very good. And I also like that you mentioned the crossover thing, because they play very straightforward, standard meta styles. You're not going to see, the no regret builds out of Silky. You're not going to see Avalo builds out of Semper. Very straightforward. I'm curious to see what Semper is up to these days, mostly because as someone who likes to play mech is becoming so much more of a thing recently, but that late game Terran style that Maru's been pushing lately is also gross and very good. The heavy Raven play, when you move from that bio into Ghost Liberator, and then eventually you get those Ravens versus Zerg, I mean, that's That's one of the scariest things that you're going to go up against.
Yeah, I really like that you brought that up because I think that Semper, to me, he is at heart always and forever going to be a bio player. I think no matter what, even if he ends up busting out some of those mech builds, I still feel like his playstyle kind of situates around the bio style. He's always been like a macro aggro player. He's not like the macro, I'm going to sit back defensively. He's macroing up and then using, sometimes overcommitting his units to drop harassment and constantly picking apart his opponent. But there are styles of mech that are actually accommodating for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Thermal's match earlier showed more than enough with the style of mech that he played, very heavy on Cyclones and transitioning into Cyclone Tank Viking, which is extremely uncommon. So curious to see what he brings to the table here. It's the Reactor Hellion opening with that starport going on to the tech lab. On the other side of things, I mean, we haven't really discussed it too much, but Silky's just doing very standard, taking his base, getting some drones, opening with Ling speed, nothing outside of the ordinary, as he's not really going to be making his tech choice or anything that we'll be talking about too much until his lair is done, since he hasn't opened with a Baneling Nest or a Roach Warren.
Indeed. The Reaper just still continuing to poke forward. It's seen the third base and double confirms it again. Well, it knows that there's not anything super crazy happening over there, but there is also a lair on the way, and Semper just trying to do a good job of keeping those units alive, but eventually ends up losing that Reaper.
I do like the opening here out of Semper. I'm a huge fan of going Viking first. He was researching Cloak while getting that Viking, but decides to change his mind since he doesn't see anything that would necessitate a Banshee early on. He cancels the Cloak. He's going to go for a Liberator instead, which will give him a little bit more sustained fighting power, a little bit more hit points. Cloak wouldn't end up being very useful this game since A, spores are on the way, and B, the lair is almost done. Since there were no other tech commitments, Overseer will be a very easy tech path for Silky to grab. Yeah,
sometimes it's even just nice. Like, if your opponent sees the Cloak Banshee, sometimes it's like, they might still just make the Overseer because they're not too sure. They're just getting ready for it. And yeah, there is, in fact, that Overseer. So in a weird way, you kind of do the damage even just by the fact that they saw that it was going to be Cloak Banshee originally, and then you just kind of change it up.
Yep, Silky tries to go for the counter attack. He wants to do a little cheeky run by, unfortunately. The third command center, well placed by Semper to block with those supply depots as his Viking hunts for overlords. And these Hellions find themselves a few of the Lings trying to remove a bit of that map presence from the Zerg player.
Yeah, picks off a decent chunk of them, but Silky escapes out of there. Can keep an eye on when that third base goes down, which I think is what we're going to be waiting to see. When does Semper throw that down versus when does he add on a bunch of more buildings?
Looking at how this game is starting, we have two players in this group that are the exact opposite of the other two. Like, Semper and Silky, they've done the Wings of Liberty thing. They've shook hands like, I'm going to open with 6 queens, and you're going to go 3 command center double engineering bay, and then we will engage in the respectable combat in the mid-game to the late-game phase. Whereas Kayn and Scarlet are both like, oh, I'm going to kill you first chance I get. Like, don't even think for a second you can be this greedy.
That's so suited to their play, or like their personalities as well. Semper is like the very nice, honorable guy. Silky is also like a pretty nice, straightforward guy, occasional cheese and stuff. And then Scarlet's like the super cheeky troll. Kayn is also incredibly trolly.
Kayn is also incredibly trolly. They love to talk smack, even if you guys don't see it too much on the podcasts. So Liberator's going to come up with the Hellion support. Quite a few drone kills. Really nice play to start off the harass for Semper, especially since that Liberator is still alive. The Queen kind of got stuck behind. The Liberator won't be able to get away, but burns through a lot of Queen energy. And the 8 drones, I like this start because Silky, I mean, if you give those 8 drones back, he's in a very good position economically. So this provides time for Semper to get that third base up and, delay whatever it was that Silky wanted to do.
Yeah, Semper, though, you really need to keep an eye on how many medevacs he actually has alive, because that is going to be a really key component of Semper's sort of bio style. He's the kind of guy who really likes to just, not necessarily in the super early stage of the game, or even as much in the mid-game, but as the game goes on, he's constantly doing things like this. And you look at this, and you'll say, okay, he loads up 2 medevacs. Yeah, he's got the 2 tanks, but he's realistically just got like 7, 8 Marines. If there was an attack movement across the map, which, by the way, he wouldn't really be able to see right now, he'd be in some trouble. But he's relying on these kinds of drops to put pressure on and keep his opponent at home.
Yep, these 2 medevacs are going to fly straight over these 2 queens. Now we have Hydras and Banelings on the way. With how fast he got that lair, he has a very quick Baneling speed. It's been done since like 6.5 minutes. So he has the capability that he needs to deal with Marines on creep especially on creep. So I think it'll be a little bit difficult for Semper to get damaged on catching this queen off creep is nice if he can kill it.
Yeah.
I'd say that's a big win here and get something for this earlier aggression that you're doing.
Yeah, Silky not really opting to try and defend it as it was a little bit too far out on its own. Combat Shield's about to finish up, then wow, this is actually something that we end up seeing Silky do a lot, just going straight up into that infestation pit, going straight up into the hive, and just kind of rushing out into the hive tech, whatever it's going to be, whether it be Vipers, the Ultras, Broodlords. Silky loves doing these kind of plays.
And looking at his progression, we see that Silky's also lining his upgrades up very nicely with this. If he starts his hive as soon as that infestation pit is done, he'll be able to go straight to 3-3, and he will never fall behind upgrades against Semper, which would be really nice. He sees that this army is kind of making its way up here. We have 3 tanks. They need to siege, and they're going to siege right as Silky engages the army.
Yeah, Baneling's not quite able to get the connections they want, though, as the Banelings on the left, and we're not able to get on top of the Marines since the siege tanks are there. And the rest of the Marines are able to focus down the rest of the Banelings. So now Silky in a bit of danger, but the siege tanks are not in range of the mineral line just yet, just the Marines poking forward.
Yeah, I like that he only sends a few of the Marines forward towards that mineral line, just try to keep it from mining. And we have a really nice army from Semper. The Baneling count dwindled a fair bit before that last attack, so he's going to try to focus this down, lift up into the medevacs, and get out of there. They're going to go straight to the main base, and the tanks get a couple of shots off before they're surrounded by the Zerglings.
Oh, but there's some Hydras waiting for Semper. He keeps both of the medevacs alive. One of them eventually goes down, but not before all of these Marines get out. And now they stutter step their way into the mineral line to try and get more damage done. Some of the Banelings do manage to find their connections that they've been looking for, but 15 workers go down, and Semper is ready for round 2.
That's a really nice amount of damage, and also keep in mind, he started the hive in Semper's face. So Semper knows exactly the timing of that hive. He knows that the late game tech, it could be on the way soon, but he didn't have to think about, oh, was the hive already done? Is there an ultra transition coming that I'm not prepared for? No, he still has a fair bit of time. He's got his 4th base going down, and I think the 4th base is under construction right now, so he's building it on location. So he's feeling very confident in this game. He's not worried about counterattacks. He's just bringing the heat.
All right, Semper moving in with another one of these double drops. Has to back out of there, loses one of the medevacs with all the Marines inside, but also using this as an opportunity to clean up some creep spread. This is patented Semper, trying to just hit at multiple times. I would say he's like one of momentum in a different way than a lot of other people you'd refer to. He is one of the players that just likes to every 5 seconds have something in his opponent's face, every 5 to 10 seconds.
That's what separates him from the rest of the North American Terran players, of course, is we generally see a big weakness in particularly American server players that they play very passively. They don't take all the opportunities to punish their opponents for, being out of position or being greedy, as much as you'll say on Korean server or European server where players are generally more aggressive. So you have to be very on point to deal with all of this and attack, and Semper's doing a great job of it.
Yeah, Semper, I almost feel like he's forcing his opponent to play DDR. Yeah, you know what? You might hit the first 10, 15 steps and defend perfectly, but it's that 16th step.
There's only one hole in the wall. It's there.
Ooh, okay, well, plus 2 melee Banelings do one-shot work, or
not SCVs.
No, but not SCVs. Yeah.
That's why that's why I don't like playing. That's one thing I hate. When I started playing Protoss, I'm like, oh, the Overlord drop comes in, and then the Banelings just one-shots everything like.
By the way, that one medevac is still back in the top right of the main base.
And that's the sign of a Terran who does not use the Select All Army hotkey. Good on you, Semper. You're a better man than me.
All right, he's moving in from the left-hand side. There's another drop on the bottom side, but he's focused over here. Siege tanks are going to get obliterated. The Baneling's also getting good connections.
That was a pretty amazing fight for Silky as he just catches all of those tanks out of position. They were all just kind of walking up there and chilling.
Yeah.
Semper's got to scan ahead if he's going to make big pushes like that. He loses the anchoring tool in those siege tanks that allows him to push with bio because he only has Marines, which means Banelings are going to destroy his army if he takes a fight without tanks.
And if there's a criticism I have to levy at Semper's play, is that splits are not his forte. I know that everybody always talks about Terran players and their splits and their skill level and how it directly reflects. Semper is one of the players that I think has gotten where he is by just doing multi-pronged aggression and splitting up his army, but not so much splitting up his Marines.
It's a very difficult thing to make work. He's going into some Liberators. I would like to see a Fusion Core. Liberator Advanced Ballistics is a great thing to have.
Ghost Academy also.
Ghost Academy, so Liberator Ghost. I guess if he's going to make the Ghost investment, maybe he doesn't want to put all that extra money into the Fusion Core and the research. But look at this. The Hydra Bane is going to come up. There's only one tank. It starts to siege as the push comes, and that tank dies immediately. The only other tank gets it with a Blinding Cloud halfway through sieging. So suddenly it's just these few Marauders he's mixed in that need to deal with the Banes. He actually does get rid of most of them, so we're going to see that bio directly engage the Hydralisks.
Yeah, but the Hydras do reign supreme, and there was a drop over by the third that Silky handily shuts down and is able to defend that without really taking any damage on either side. Silky's doing a great job of just swatting down Semper left and right.
Really good smooth transition into the Liberators with the Ghosts. We do need to see some Ghosts get on the map. Ultralisks are coming out. That one medevac is still there.
You know, it's kind of funny because I want to like say, oh, maybe he's waiting too long, but then you look, it's like
99% of the time.
there are two Hydras there still.
Yeah, 99% of the time. At some point, you're like, I need all my stuff, and you press this like the army hotkey, even if you have it unbound, because I have it unbound, but you just click on it. I'm like, I need everything. I click on it, and then that medevac just flies past the Hydras and dies, and you're like, well, I've got everything else, you know. But
yeah. It's actually kind of funny, though. It also reflects that Silky, not a player that ends up using that F2 army hotkey, because otherwise these two Hydras would have moved from there long ago.
Yep. So it's just two players being very, very methodical, very patient. Okay, you can see how deliberate they like to be with their actions that they make. But this Hydraling Bane Force pushes forward for a second. I mean, we got Liberators and tanks. But we also have Ultralisks on the other side of the field now. So Ghosts are in production, more Liberators are in production, but spreading out against this is tough because you need that big army to take down those big Ultralisks.
Indeed. Soon to be 3-3 Ultras as +3 armor getting closer and closer to finishing up, but they should already have chitinous plating. Yes, they do. So Semper gonna have a hard time directly engaging versus that until he gets that Liberator count out, not just for harassment purposes, but for actual defensive and offensive purposes.
Yeah, we have the Cloak on the way as well, so really hoping to use those Ghosts a lot. I mean, we've already seen some nukes drop today in the Europe group, so maybe Semper's just saying, I would like to show that the American players can do these as well. And that's a lot of Liberators, so it comes down to whether or not these Vipers can get big abducts to pull this army apart.
Okay, Spire on the way here for Silky. Maybe thinking about an eventual Broodlord transition. Maybe just looking to get up some of those Corruptors, but either way, it seems like he wants to force the engagement before that. He is maxed out at this point. He charges on forward. Banelings looking for the connections with the Marines, not actually able to find them just yet. The Siege Tank's kind of tanking and buffering for these Marines and Marauders, but is that going to be enough?
Yeah, that Blinding Cloud goes over the tanks, getting rid of their power. The Ghosts were not able to get those snipes off, really, at the start of the fight that he would have wanted. He has this point to retreat to, since it is a planetary fortress, but that army is still scared. He's going to force that fifth to lift up.
A lot of SCVs over here about to go down as, okay, it looks like a couple of them do manage to survive.
You kind of overbuild SCVs, to be frank, because that knocks down to 66, which is ideally where you want to be, unless you're never maxing out. But Greater Spire is on the way, and that means we are going to see that potential Broodlord switch as the number of siege tanks increases.
Yeah, looks like the medevac finally did get picked off. It tried to make a run for it. I think one of the Hydras has all the kills, has the kill on the medevac. Okay, well, with that Greater Spire on the way, this does become a little bit tricky, but the Ghost production is gradually getting up there. He's only making one Ghost at a time right now, only has two.
Nice little macro slugfest we've got going on.
Yeah,
I'd say.
These are, I feel like, the very normal Semper games, which again always makes them very entertaining and very fun. Oh, I love this. He burrows just a small segment of the Lings, but it looks like Semper does notice it. He scans to pick him off. Is he actually going to get all of them?
He's a good player, very intelligently making sure there's nothing left behind, but he uses this opportunity to dive onto that northwest base, pulls that Liberator, and the Liberator doesn't unsiege when pulled there, weirdly enough, so has to reposition. The rest of the Liberators come up, but unfortunately that base gets smashed down, and Semper loses a bit of that income. He's going to try to chase these Ultralisks all the way out.
Yeah, dangerous to get into melee range with those Ultras, but does manage to kill off quite a few of them. Kills off enough Overseers also that he supply blocks his opponent. But Silky still has a pretty scary looking army behind this because enough of those Ultras survived. Handful of Vipers survived even if they're low on health, or sorry, energy. But they need to be in position over here to defend. I think the Liberator siege up is going to be a bit too strong.
He needs to be very careful about the amount of times that he's stimming, though. All of these medevacs have no energy left on them, and we can see that a lot of this army is stuck in that yellow health range, and all of these units that are stimming themselves down to orange are going to have a difficult time getting more use. He's trying to backstab him, but there's a lot of tanks covering the flank, and the Liberator zones are still covering where the Ghosts are.
Okay, Ghosts getting picked off, though. The Overseers are here and do not allow them to get those snipes off, and the Ultras, for the most part, are going to survive. More than enough to survive there. And yeah, there's some damage it looks like being done to the workers for Semper. But Semper, I mean, he hasn't been able to shut down this bottom right-hand base because I love this move for Silky. Just throw up a bunch of static defense, prevent Semper from pulling you apart from multiple angles.
He's adding a lot more Liberators. Advanced Ballistics would be really nice in a situation like this just because you can cover the ground from further away. It's a lot easier to spread out, but it is an expensive upgrade to research into. However, adding a few medevacs would help. Okay, he's getting at least one more. The energy issue on the medevacs is becoming a real thing because he's fighting so much and he's stimming so much. He cannot really heal his army as effectively as he would want to.
Yeah, sort of a downside to his style is exactly what you were saying.
Most of his army's still very hurt. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still actually pretty stimmed up, and it's that high-octane style that he goes for, where he tries to force these engagements so often. It does have its backfire moments. Yeah.
His bio's gonna fight 60% of its health in this engagement as the Ultralisks come up towards this base. It's not a planetary fortress, and Silky is gonna be able to swallow up this Terran army. The Hydralisks are taking a beating, but it's too much. GG. Silky takes the first map.
Well, really, really solid defense there from Silky. Being able to swat Semper down left and right, I feel like is what allowed him to do that while also teching up. And that's how he just, I feel like, got ahead. At that point, it was hard for Semper.
What we just watched was textbook Terran versus Zerg and textbook Zerg versus Terran. It's your Marines with the tanks. You go for the bioharass at the start of the game versus that Ling Hydra Bane. Both players were allowed to do whatever they wanted at the start. There was no crazy aggression. There was no real significant harass. He had the 8 drones picked off, but he was like, it's kind of like built into his build. He's like, I'm going to build Hellions in case you cheese me. Then I'm going to throw them away. I'll take whatever I get for him, and then we're going to go into this very long macro game style. And Silky's like, I'm going to defend whatever you throw at me, and then I'm going to go into this long defensive macro game style.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned that there wasn't a lot of worker damage or massive damage done, but it wasn't for a lack of trying. Semper kept trying to throw out these drops, the liberate harassment, everything, timing them out together and back and forth, like one after the other. But yeah, Silky just did such a great job with that textbook style. So these kind of games I feel like are always weird when they're a game one, because then you always wonder, okay, are one of these players going to try and mix it up? Because I feel as though Semper, one of the biggest criticisms that's been levied at him by many other players in the scene, is that he is a macro guy, and that's all he is. He is only the macro guy. He doesn't really have that dangerous edge of, you're not really worried that he's going to like proxy 2-racks you or anything like that.
That's a pretty big weakness to have. If your opponent knows that you're not going to ever do those sort of styles, we can see those aggressively expanding Zerg players. Silky didn't get even his Baneling Nest until his lair was done because he's like, well, I'm going to time it out for Baneling speed, but I don't need anything early. You're not going to you're not hitting me with Hellbats or anything. These Hellions aren't going to come with any real support. The Liberator was a nice touch, but he had enough queens and soaked up a lot of shots with them as well.
Yeah, I think Silky's generally a pretty smart player and will make those kinds of adjustments to whoever he's playing. And he's also not afraid to get a little bit cheesy, get a little bit cheeky sometimes, which I think is also something that can sometimes go pretty well versus a player like Semper. But
I think if you're up 1-0 against the guy that you know is going to play a passive opening at least,
this is like the time that you always talk about is the time to get cheeky.
It'll be tough. It is Eastwatch. That's the next map.
Ooh,
so, I mean, the best Zerg cheese on this map really is, like, Nidus.
Yeah.
You can proxy hash. I've seen it, but the way that the ramp works, a lot of ramps in these maps these days are very weird, or at least the openings to your natural, because you used to be able to block it. It used to be like 2 depots, bunker, 2 depots. It was like the easiest thing in the world. And now it's like on Blackpink, you have to put like bunker, or just it's depot, bunker, and you need like 2 depots, like, but one of them's in like this weird hex spot, so you can't run by. This map actually has, you can block it with 4 buildings really easily. The way that it's laid out basically shows you how to do it. It's a very easy to defend map when you're trying to build defenses as a Terran if you're getting cheesed.
Yeah, it's no dataless points.
Oh, God. That's just depot, bunker.
Yeah. What was it? 4 Nexus? 5
and that was
Nexus?
also the era of the Protoss hitting you as well, so you'd need to put like 3 bunkers in your main.
I don't want to hear it as a Protoss player at to wall off versus Zerg, and it took 4 Nexus to wall off. Like, that is spawning up here in the top right in the corner of the map.
Macro Nexus to a whole new level.
Oh, yeah. We have the red Zerg player sitting up 1-0. It's Silky.
His opponent in the bottom left, the blue Terran player. He is Semper. Well, if you want to play slow, this map is nice for that, but I do think that with the amount of space you have to work with, the lack of high ground for abusing ranged units makes it a little trickier for the Terran I would like to see Semper mix it up, but based on what you said, it seems like we're not going to get that. It would behoove Silky to make this game go on, since, you know, Zerg thrives on the larger maps, getting map control, and just preventing your opponent from being able to hit you with those big attacks. So I am very interested to see what Semper goes. Based on the last game, it seems like we could just have the same thing again, though.
Yeah, I feel like it's probably likely, but, you know, Semper occasionally does like to at least mix it up in terms of what type of late game composition and stuff he goes for. So there's still a chance maybe he will go into that mech. I know I've seen him go mech at least a couple times before. It's just I don't think it's as often as many other Terran players these days.
Yeah. I do think that a lot of the Terrans who are half and half prefer to go bio because it's much easier to close games out when you're ahead. But
yeah.
But I mean, having mech in your toolkit is extremely important. As I was talking about earlier with In Control, when you have that threat where the opponent has to consider that you might go mech, it's big because it means that you don't want to skip having like that roach horn. You want to make sure that you're constantly scouting, because if you try to do a big Ling-based play and you get slammed by Hellions, you're like, well, wow, I didn't realize he was going to build this many. Or, you know, the heavy Banshee investment, because when you play bio, it's normally going to be like max 1.
Yeah.
If at all, because Semper like faked the Banshee last game, didn't even want to do it.
Oh, yeah. I actually wonder if that do you think that was like he didn't want to do it, or he just adapted and said, you scouted it, whatever?
I don't think it's necessarily bad. Maybe if he knew for a fact that there was no like roach horn in the back of the main, then you don't really need it, because it's hard to do damage with Banshees in the current meta since Queens outrange them now. So, and Queens and Banshees don't beat them really 1v1 anymore if they have detection. So it's kind of like a weird thing. Uthermal was successful with them, or I think it was Soul. Soul got a lot of damage done with him because he went for 2 Banshees, which you don't normally do when you're playing bio.
Okay, well, we got a proxy starport, something I feel like is a little less common in TvZ.
Yeah. Proxies in general are just not as strong versus Zerg, because the Overlords, if they don't go all the way to the Terran base, they're usually going to fan out around the Zerg so that you can at least check for proxies.
Yeah.
It kind of acts as a deterrent, and for that reason, Zergs don't scout for them as often as they should, and that might be why he gets away with it.
Yeah, I will say also this might be, I don't know if this is the case, but this might also just be an identification playstyle-wise for Semper on Silky, because I know that Silky tends to scout with 1 to 2 Overlords, and then he's done. He doesn't really worry about it anymore.
Well, with the Hellion rally and the medevac being built at the proxy, makes me think he wants to do one of those really fast, like, Hellion drops, where you just get straight into the main, you bypass where the wall is, you bypass where the Lings are, most importantly, and there's usually only going to be 1 queen in that main base. So Silky sees these Hellions running around, and he's like, oh yeah, he's checking for bases or whatever, but in reality, it's going to be this cheeky Hellion drop.
Yeah, where are Silky's units? He's got 8 Lings sitting up in the main base, actually. I think probably preparing for a run-by since they're at the ramp. But there's a Nidus Worm coming out behind this. Oh, boy.
Well,
okay.
I did say, I guess that's really the one big attack thing you can do on this map. So the Hellions get inside of the main, up to 4 drones killed, and that position makes it very difficult for the Lings because they'd have to run between the hatch and the spawning pool. Really nice harass out of these Hellions. I think as these queens show up, you just get in that medevac and just get the hell out of there.
Yeah, it's very important that Semper actually still has enough back at home behind this to defend, because if he just doesn't have units because he invested into all this stuff, remember that starport on the other side of the map, he's going to send a Liberator. Oh, okay. Is he sending that back home? Does he realize what's going on? Oh, he scanned. He saw the Nidus.
So at this point, you just want to crank out double pump Cyclones. Now the Nidus Worm is starting. He will have 2 Cyclones and a good few units. It's possible he could focus this down. He's getting another Marine out. He needs to really wrap himself around this Nidus Worm to make it as difficult as possible. Siege the Liberator on it. Siege the Liberator on it. Okay, the Siege on the Liberator was a little bit slow. Focusing down that Nidus is going to be a bit trickier. He gets rid of one of the Queens of the Liberator, and he will be able to shut down that Nidus of Silky. And that's just an absolutely perfect defense out of Semper. He got a ton of drone kills across the map. He holds the Nidus. He's going to start his 3rd command center, and this is enough units to get aggressive with. I don't know that that Silky wants to risk another worm. He's basically broke.
And he also lost units during that. If it's one of those situations where the Nidus Worm dies instantly, then you're like, okay, maybe
Yeah,
I'll just make another one, but you lose a bunch of roaches.
He has no queens.
Yeah.
Fear Dragon. He has no queens, so he
Literal no queens.
He cannot inject. He cannot. Well, maybe he had a tumor or two active somewhere, but
I don't think he does because it shows up in the. Oh, sorry, it shows up in structures. No, there's nothing.
Well, yeah, he had a few, but yeah.
I guess I got picked off or something. Oh no, here.
Just one. Yeah, it's just one at the front. So you can't add to that. So a lot of things are delayed by this. Really losing those queens sucks when you have to play the game out longer. That's one of the reasons why a lot of Zergs just tap out when that build fails, because Terran production continues to move forward while you're just sitting there in the water for a good, 30 seconds, whatever it takes to build that bad boy. We have a Liberator going up to harass that southeast base while this big push comes towards the front.
I'm going to try and pull some of these queens out of position once again, because it's not like there's going to be Hydras or anything coming out anytime shortly. So that means that while he tries to pull these units over here, there's also another Liberator moving up into the main base, and he starts to push forward with Hellbats and Cyclones against the Roaches.
Yeah, this is really, really nice play out of Semper. He's got a big push coming up. As long as those Cyclones keep a little bit of distance between themselves and the Roaches, which the Hellbats should provide, they can get a lot of work done, as those Hellbats typically win 1 versus 1 against Roaches, and with Medevac support, they're going to win handily. GG, Semper ties up the series 1 apiece.
Yeah, really well done. Remember, he had a third base on the way behind that, so it really was just about getting decent amount of damage done with that Hellion drop, scouting out the Night Storm and defending it, and then just following it up with relatively okay aggression.
Yeah, even if Silky knows what's coming at that point when you lose so many resources in that Nidus push. And I love that you brought up that if the Nidus had been sniped instantly, it would have been so much more salvageable for him, because he dumped all his
only
queens.
Semper was better at killing that.
Silky's like, damn it, why didn't you just kill it instantly? If it's going to fail, I would have rather have not done the attack. But that's just the way the cookie crumbles here in StarCraft. So we have a tied series now. And Semper mixed it up a bit that game. I liked his mix-up. He got enough damage in, and he recognized what was happening. Bringing the Liberator home was crucial. That was where he was able to start killing those queens. And just a good... It's one of the more predictable all-ins on that map. Eastwatch, it takes forever to get evenlings across because you don't have creep. It takes forever to get roaches across. What are you going to do if you want to all-in somebody? You're going to Nidus them.
There's a reason why we've seen it multiple times today, is another way of putting it. But that doesn't mean we get to hop into game number 3. And this time it's going to be on Acid Plant. I feel like it's a good map, but I just have not seen it for a while.
We haven't played Acid Plant today.
Like,
unless
I think
I've missed one. But
I almost feel like I've seen Abiogenesis more often than Acid Plant in the past, week.
Yeah.
Which is weird, because you never see Abiogenesis. Like, if you see Abiogenesis,
that's
it's because they played, Veto Chicken, where they're like, you'll veto it.
With how WCS works, we know that at some point there will be a best of 7, and it will be decided on Abiogenesis, and then we'll be like, it was the greatest game ever, despite us never seeing that map.
Oh my god, that's like the story of Arena and Dasan Station and everything.
Yeah. I was reminded, by the way, Scarlet and Kane played one of their games on Acid Plant. Being a mirror matchup, it's not as significant, but this is a map where you can't really use Reapers against Zerg, so I wonder if... Semper might still do it to put the pressure on, but it's whatever. He is the blue Terran in the top left. Our boy Semper tying things up 1 apiece.
And his opponent spawning down in the bottom right-hand corner of the map. We have our red Zerg player. It's Silky.
Yeah. Players typically, I think we are seeing, especially even in Challengers, becoming very clear that players are preferring maps like Catalyst. No one minds playing Catalyst. That map's really popular. Acid Plant kind of shows its face every now and again. But Eastwatch is pretty popular pick for Zergs. Pretty popular pick against Terran. And Backwater, pretty popular pick for Terran.
Yeah. So, with this kind of map, I know that the things that immediately pop into my mind are Zerg players defending this location base with siege tanks pushing down along this kind of rampart. You have the siege tank siege up at this kind of little choke point, and then Terran players are just poking forward with a Bioforce or something, sniping off the hatcheries. It's like the most annoying pushes that I feel like I see almost every time it's a TvZ on this map.
That's one thing to look out for, is that if the game goes so far. We have the Reaper opening, so basically this map just doesn't even... The edge of your main does not actually connect to any of the areas outside. So you cannot jump up the front with Reapers, and when you are playing on a map like this and you choose to build a Reaper, usually it's because you just want to keep the Zerg player honest, where you're saying you're going to still have to get Zergling speed at the start of this game. You're still going to have to open up with either a pool first to get a fast queen or that Ling speed so that you can defend it. And if you don't, my Reaper's going to be able to poke, maybe get a drone or two, and scout everything that you're up to.
Indeed. So we'll see how effective Semper is with just kind of getting that scouting information with that Reaper. Follows it up with the pretty typical factory behind this. He has a command center on the way. Gets that second gas geyser. I think I'm more curious almost how Silky is going to be playing this one out. We won't really see too much of that for a bit. Probably just get an idea of how he's kind of spending that larva and whether or not he's still mining gas just with one drone. So pretty typical opening. And, ooh, actually worth noting, he didn't do what a lot of Zerg players usually try and do, which is get out the third drone before the Reaper actually makes his way into the natural. Because that's usually how you can try and get that third base down safely.
Ooh,
wow.
Nabs a drone there. I think, what was it? When the Reaper first got the regeneration added, I think in like Heart of the Swarm, it was all about like, okay, prevent the Reaper from getting 2 or more. It's like, don't let the Reaper get more than 2 kills. And then eventually it was like, don't let the Reaper get more than 1 kill. And nowadays when you see that Reaper get that even single drone kill, it's like, well, it's not really as much of a thing anymore. A lot of Zerg players have really figured out how to maneuver the queens, how to use those first 6 Lings, and it's usually okay to let those first 6 Lings be the bait to the Reaper.
That's like
as long as you don't lose any drones.
Man, that's like the story of every single time a unit sees some sort of significant buff or change. Like, you remember in the early days of Wings of Liberty, I was like, okay, don't let the Banshee get more than 15 kills. If it gets less than 15 kills, you're break even right now. Or like Oracles.
Well, back in the day, you needed evolution chambers to build spores.
Oh man.
Tragedy. Can you imagine needing a structure to unlock your anti-air static defense? Oof, I can't.
Yeah, I know as a Terran player that has to build engineering because you definitely cannot. It's unfathomable.
So we have the Viking coming up with the Hellions, and that Viking is going to be able to pick off any overlords that are on the map. We know that there's just one, I think. Yep. Maybe there's another one in the middle-ish area, but it's more about you want to be that deterrent. I think in a lot of games, when the Zerg player thinks that Viking is dead, or if they realize the Terran's not going to build one, that's when they're like, okay, well, I need an overseer speed anyway, so I can start spreading out all over the map. You want to keep that Viking alive, ideally all game, but sometimes, more often than not, it does wander its way towards the Zerg base once it gets bored, and that's when you see it taken care of. But it's going to be stim, researched early on, no mech shenanigans, and a Liberator with the 3rd command center.
All right. Yeah, Liberator's definitely nice for just continuing that aggression, kind of that pacing that I was talking about in the last game from Semper. But in the last game, we got to see Silky, like you said, cut corners by getting up a slightly later Baneling Nest. Once again, this is a Baneling Nest coming down, not around like 4 minutes or so. It's coming down close to almost 5 minutes at this point. And really, I guess, just doesn't feel like he needs it. I don't think we have an armory out, right? Yeah, so it's just a lot of Hellions.
Yep, just a lot of Hellions that are going to be using to push the creep back. Since Silky's not opening with any roaches, the damage potential here is really big. Just runs by, takes a couple shots at these Zerglings, and wants to go inside of that main base away from the majority of the queens.
Oh, there's no Lings. There's no Lings anymore. He's killed them all.
Yep, he nabs a few of the drones on the way in, and the drones are trying to spread out, but 8 kills so far. This isn't just your normal 4 Hellion run by. He'd like to get, I think you're really happy if you can break that 12 number, and he should be able to do that before they go down. He doesn't have a way to retreat them. The drones actually get away, so
yeah.
He does lose a significant amount of units. Oftentimes, this opens up for the Zerg player to just go for a massive Zergling, Baneling counterattack all in. But since he was building drones during this, he's not going to have that capability just yet. And Stim is on the way with a siege tank, so Semper would have had enough to maybe defend it.
Yeah,
in a different world.
Kind of 2 trains of defending. One is where you just overmake units and then you get aggressive with them, and the other one is you just make the drones that you're losing so you're kind of back up to a reasonable number. And that's the one that Silky opts to take, like you said. 3rd base, though, going to be finishing up here for Semper, and he has been macroing up behind all of this. Of course, Stim about to finish. +1/+1 on the way. Something that, by the way, you talked about the upgrades in that other game, and Silky didn't really look quite, or Silky looked really good with those upgrades in the first game.
Yeah, he didn't stop at all because of the way that he was able to time the Hive. The Hive ended up being like maybe 20 or 30 seconds later than he wanted it, but that was because the infestation had finished as that giant attack pushed the northwest side of his base, so at least a reasonable excuse for not having it.
All right, there's the 3rd base landing. We got our Hydra Den researching its first set of upgrades, so we can start going into that Ling Baneling Hydra style he was pretty effective with in game number 1. Semper making his first major push yet, I would say, besides just the Hellion harassment or the run-bys.
And the Dark Prophet Fear Dragon foretold that a siege tank would plant itself by those rocks, and Medivacs would ferry Marines to the other side, and the Zerg player would say, nope.
Nope, just not gonna handle it. It's happened too many times.
That's a nope.jpg on that one.
All right, Liberators is acting like a Viking right now since it's got nothing better to do as it sits between two queens in a hard place.
Yeah, not really anywhere to go. But, I mean, if you're able to deny the Zerg 4th like that so easily, since he's taking his own 3rd, this already makes me feel really good for Semper. We see it reflected in the supply a little bit. That block doesn't help either. He's going to kill another Overlord, and Silky cannot actually produce units at the moment. So this is just one of those things that you don't notice as often, but he gets a lot of work done with this attack. 3 base Terran versus 3 base Zerg. You have the upgrades on the way. 2-2 is starting, and he had that 1-1 advantage for a little bit too.
Yeah. And now he's got 2 more Medivacs to work with. Is he going to send them out? Oh man, I'm just waiting for the Semper load up. No, actually, he's going to go for a push out. Okay.
All right.
I mean, he does have.
He can do.
Yeah, he has a decent number of units. Still has those 2 Medivacs alive and ready to go back into
that actually changes things a lot. Yeah, being able to make that big push. What he wants to do is pull him away. He does have to walk onto creep to get to the place he wants to attack. But those Hydralisks, not as fast as they need to be yet.
Fake out Medivacs, moving around. Oh, actually, no, never mind. He just has the rest of the army joining in a little late.
He's decided to send everything home, it looks like. He's keeping those Medivacs there. He can try to push up this 4th base again. I'm surprised that Silky's not trying to take one of the southwest bases, or at least the central base. He's not trying to do anything other than take this 1 base again, but the rocks are still there. So I do think the potential to siege these tanks is still very real. And now that the Lings and Hydras have moved away, he's going to move the tanks even further. There you go, bases cancel again. It's like, well, can't do that. But you got to do something, man.
I mean, the first time he cancels the base, I'm like, okay, you know what? That's actually a pretty reasonable decision. You're cutting your losses there. Second time, I'm like, okay, where's your 4th base though? This is becoming a bit. Becoming a bit of a problem.
And you scan that, you're like, the Zerg's just starting his 4th. Ooh, baby.
Well, let me go ahead and run some Marines over there and snipe that off if you're defending this location.
Yep, and he's got his 4th on the way for himself. He's 2-2s close to finishing. 2nd factory. Everything that a growing Terran boy needs to go to the late game versus a Zerg.
Okay, a couple of Banelings try and run in, but the Marines get the cancel on the 4th. Another time. That's a 3rd cancel on the 4th base in a row. And it's not like Silky can even rely back on the fact that I have a bunch of tech.
He's broke. He's trying to get like units up and whatnot, but he's like, well, I need another base with 16 drones.
He doesn't even have an his infestation pit is just now getting started to even get up to high tech. He's stuck on He's
floating gas because he's trying to max. He's trying to like get a big enough army to push this away.
God.
But he can't even. He can't invest that into anything because he needs more minerals.
This is insane. Semper's literally playing whack-a-mole with the 4th base of Silky.
And now the Baneling army is going to come up and try to fight, but there's not really a lot of Banelings, so these Marines are more than capable of slaughtering this with the support of 6 siege tanks here.
They're actually a little bit walled in by those siege tanks. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, he's going to try to take both 4th bases at the same time now. He's going for the bottom left. He's going for the center position.
I can dig
this. I'm sure as soon as the tank presses that siege button, it's probably like built into the game's AI now that base just cancels.
Semper sees it. Semper sees that base, and that's why I think he's going to push down closer along the middle side as the rest of the army rallies in. Holy cow, that's a lot of Marines to be joining forces.
Yep, and this just makes it even more and more difficult. He's going to finally break these rocks down, so he says, I can hold on to this 4th. And Semper needs to be careful. He's killed the tumors, but the creep is still there. It does take a little bit of time for it to go away. If he can fight on creep, this could give Silky a chance, but this is one hell of a Terran army.
Yeah, like you said, though, it does take a bit of time to recede, but it's receding quickly, and Silky not opting to engage just yet. Wonder what he's waiting for. He's getting out a couple of these infestors, but the infestors shouldn't have enough energy for fungals. He's going to try and engage over here, get some good Baneling connections on the Marines on the high ground. Getting on top of the siege tanks isn't going to be enough.
Not so far. The Banelings are all dead. There's still several tanks alive. The Marines have plowed through the Hydralisks on the east side of this front. And while the tanks will eventually be picked off, most of the Hydras are going to die too. Most important thing here, he's got the harass on the southwest side. So he's going to kill that I guess 4th/5th base.
Yeah.
And the army, at least what's left of it, is still putting on pressure in that middle area while the Terran takes his 4th.
Oh yeah, that is the real problem behind all of this, is that Semper is still macroing heavily And now Semper even scans this base, so I know what his next target is likely going to be.
Yeah, he got those rocks low, but they weren't actually killed just yet.
Yeah, he's going to go ahead and finish the job.
Gonna finish him now. So, once again, we raised the question. How do you beat a Terran when you're on even number of bases? It's 3-3 coming in for Semper. Silky is not even able to start his 3-3. The fourth base is planted down, and unlike a hatchery, that fourth base for Semper has big guns on it that blow stuff up.
That's not going to be fun to deal with. I also like this half attempt at a wall. It's like, it's close enough.
Meh.
That's ultraless proof.
Meh. That's an American wall for you. They have the fusion core coming in. I believe the Ghost Academy is done, so we can get ourselves some sniperinos going, but will he even need them? There are so many Marines coming up with these medevacs towards that fourth base, and at this point, the damage that can be done from just focusing it down is also big enough that he may consider doing something reckless. He has a huge advantage. You might as well leverage your army supply lead, because I don't think that he's particularly vulnerable to a counterattack here, even if he trades out this whole army. He has so much production running back home. He has so much income because he's max. He's starting to put some of it away that he can afford to take a less than favorable trade just because of the lead he's built.
Okay, Ling's trying to come in from behind. No, he's actually going to go for a counterattack, but he just runs into the reinforcements.
Yeah, there's a lot of Marines in this game, Silky. The Hydra Bane is going to try to push through the choke point into the siege tanks, bio splitting behind it, and that is just not going to work.
And there it is. GG. Semper takes the game. He's going to put himself in a very, very nice spot in that winner's match.
Not too shabby. Really well played by Semper. That map, I mean, he used the layout of that map perfectly.
Yeah.
Silky, the biggest thing to note, like, as soon as you have to cancel that base, if your opponent is thinking about making that play, surely they're going to think about it the next time you try to take that base. So either get those rocks taken care of immediately, or don't retake that base 3 times, go straight for the bottom left base, or even the center base. I've seen Zergs take the center just because it's easier to rally towards.
And by the time he started trying to experiment with different bases he could be taking, Semper was already at enough of an army supply that he could now start putting pressure on both of those bases at the same time.
His army could fight head to head, which was where it got tough. Because at first, that fourth base got canceled by a tank and 16 Marines or so, which...
They were harassment forces.
Yeah, if faced head to head, his army could have killed it, but oh well.
Well, Silky still is going to be in it, as that is the nature of the group's stages, as he's going to be going to that losers match to face off versus Kane. But we also have Scarlet versus Semper, which I'm not going to lie is probably one of my favorite NA matchups. We're going to be starting with Kane versus Silky first, though. We'll be back in a little bit.